Hello, Lyric Armstrong, your real estate agent and advocate. Okay, so we're back in court. We're going back to Lenawee Court. We again are continuing our hearing on the Dee Warner matter in probate court. So if this is a sensitive topic for you, please do me a favor, go ahead and click off. It's okay. Check out a different video. Make sure that if you have a need of the ADT security system, you take advantage of the code so that you can get those free items. No need to overpay or pay for something that they're giving away. So use the code 213-444-6336. Go to what is it? The video that I did, and you'll see all the pertinent information as to what they're giving away. It's a new customer limited offer. So, take advantage of that while you can. And you call their phone number at 1-844-347-8175. So 1-844-347-8175. And you give them the code, which is down here, 213-444-6336. So you give them this code after you call the number and see about getting these items for free. All right, let's go on into court because we are ready. Ready, Freddie. All right, Judge, we're ready for court. This is Judge, I believe, Sala, I believe is her name, Judge Sala. Okay.
852CA. Okay, we're back.
I gotta do my housekeeping. I'm checking my like button, so make sure you do the same, like and subscribe. I'm already subscribed, so here, you know what? I didn't do this. Okay, yeah. So we're getting notifications. Now I've gotten the bell rings. We are all good to go. All right, Judge, we're ready for court.
Mr. Lee, are we ready for your witness?
Ready, Judge.
Very good.
Oh, stand back, Larry.
Okay.
You swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Watch out for the step there.
Hi.
Hi,
Would you state and spell your full name, please?
Todd Nerick,
Could you spell it for us?
Neyrinck.
Thank you.
You're
Have
welcome.
a seat and talk right up to that microphone.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes,
Your Honor, I would object as far as Mr. Nerick's testimonies. I'm not quite sure what he's going to be testifying to, but this is the criminal contempt hearing of Dale Warner. Dale Warner is not testifying on his own behalf. So far, the evidence is uncontroverted. I'm unsure how Mr. Nerick is going to testify as to what Dale Warner did or did not do. If he's going to be used to impeach Mr. Bach or Mr. Dempsey's testimony, that would be one thing, but I'm not sure how he can testify on behalf of Dale Warner.
Right, a little bit of a preview on the relevance of this witness.
Glad to, Your Honor. Mr. Nerick was
Oh gosh, let me speed him up.
at the very beginning of the creation of DDW Investments. He has been involved in multiple capacities, but primarily working in the office and as a dispatcher for DDW Investments, testified to by Mr. Bach. He also is infinitely familiar with the exhibit that's number 1. He was involved with the customers at DDW Investments, is familiar with the work that Mr. Bach performed within DDW Investments as the accountant.
Okay, Bach is not Dale. That's Zach Bach, which is Dee's son from a previous relationship, if I'm getting this correct. And he keeps calling him an accountant, but he's more the little bit that we heard, it sounded more like he was the bookkeeper.
And Mr.
Whatever. He doesn't seem to have a CPA
Merrick
license.
was aware of creation of DDW Transportation and was there at the time that DDW Transportation was created. He
So
was a longstanding employee of the Warners,
Okay.
day-to-day contact with Dee Warner concerning the business entities and particularly DW Investments, and was terminated by Dee
So?
Warner. Now works for Laidlaw, and he can testify as to what his position is at Laidlaw, but is very intimately familiar with the businesses and the business of DW Investments and how it was operated and how things got done.
If you're terminated from a position, are you adversarial to that company? In most instances, yes. Unless the company, had to close, they were laid off, you were laid off because they have closed, maybe you're not so adversarial. But I don't know, what is the point of his testimony? I still don't get the clarity on that. It sounds like all he wants him to testify to is the ins and outs of the company's operation, for which Mr. Bach already testified to. So is he a counter witness to Mr. Bach's testimony?
To support a testimony, which would be not only to talk about DW Investments, but also to impeach Mr. Bach.
To impeach what?
Mr.
To
Bach.
impeach. Okay, finally he gets to the
Anything else?
question.
Any
All right.
other arguments?
I guess I'll listen to his testimony to the extent it is outside the scope of attempting to impeach or contradict Mr. Bach's testimony, then I'm going to object.
Your Honor, I'd like to present you. something.
Okay, you'll have to.
Okay, we'll wait till
sorry.
we're done. Calm down.
You're just the witness for today. I appreciate you coming. The structure of our hearing under the
I
court
can't run
rules.
this.
No, I can't even really either. Mr. Leach gotta ask all the questions.
Okay.
For now.
Mr. Derrick, will you state your name for the record and spell it as the court indicated and tell us how old you are and where you reside?
I'm
I think you
55
did that
years
already.
old. Todd Merritt, Neyrinck, I believe, is how it's spelled.
And who do you work for?
I work for Laidlaw Carriers, Bolton, USA,
You
What
believe?
is your job at Laidlaw Carriers?
division manager.
And what does that entail?
It means moving freight, brokering loads, finding new business, growing the business, exploring new opportunities.
Did you know Dee Warner?
Yes.
How did you know her?
Friend of mine, Mark Barrett, worked for Dale and D, and I was laid off from my previous job. And I worked for them in the winter of 2006, hauling seed, just part-time.
And did that part-time job turn into a full-time job?
It did in 2007. I was ready to make the change, and the business atmosphere of what I did previously changed, and I was ready to move on to something different. I wanted to go back to kind of the roots of where I grew up in the trucking business, and that's what I did.
Okay. So you weren't there at the very beginning of DDW Investments?
Yes, I was.
You were, okay.
Yes.
Were you involved in helping the Warners form the company?
The business was formed previous to my coming there in 2006. BDW Investments was formed. Dale and D were going to buy a feed store. They were going to have a contract with Purina, and they inquired on purchasing some property nearby and putting up a feed and something similar to what Cutler
Sir,
Dickerson
I'm gonna
did.
object, and my ground to be, unless
Was
you
it the
can.
truth? You don't want to hear it?
Okay, I'll have to settle the objection before we can.
Oh, objection, non-responsive, argumentative, motion to move to strike, all that extra banter. Ridiculous.
Continue with your testimony. Just wait.
I don't know if this is his firsthand knowledge or if this is hearsay. He hasn't indicated that this is what he has observed, that he has heard from a party, or whether this is hearsay. So that's my objection.
First-hand knowledge.
Okay,
This witness is all over the place. He should not be going back and forth with the attorneys. He's there to answer the questions that are posed upon him. Whatever this attorney's objection is, the judge, that attorney, and then the one that's at the podium are the ones that need to communicate to the judge, and the judge makes the final ruling. The witness does not need to interject. It is up to this attorney to clarify, to make sure that the record is clear, whether it's firsthand knowledge or hearsay. And all of this extra spiciness is just so unnecessary. Oh my gosh, who cares at this point? At this point, it's like, who cares what he has to say? He's so rude.
if you could clarify, please, because my understanding from your testimony was that you said that you weren't there when DGW was.
I
formed.
was there.
Right. And you know what, another thing, for those who ever are witnesses, you may have a whole history with the opposing side. You may have had deposition and had the worst experience with them and just been completely contentious throughout the time frame. When you get to court, we don't know that. You know, we do not know that. This is a bench trial, so that means the judge is presiding over it. She can probably surmise that and be okay with it. But when you're doing a jury trial as a witness, if you want to keep your credibility and sustain your position as a knowledgeable witness, don't be confrontational, because it's going to off-put the jury and they're going to just be like, I don't know what his problem, his attitude was. I cannot stand him. And they're going to start listening to you. That's human nature. You irritate someone long enough, they're going to stop
First-hand
listening.
knowledge.
Okay, if you
Yeah.
could clarify, please, because my understanding from your testimony was that you said that you weren't there when DGW was
I
formed.
was there part-time and I heard all about it from Dee. I was a fairly close confidant of hers in the time that I worked there. Your Honor.
Oh my gosh, he still is not clarifying the record. He's not even listening to the question before he answers. So now you've contradicted yourself. You said it's firsthand knowledge, but in your explanation, you say you had all this information that was given to you by being a confidant of these. And you just stated that on the record that you weren't there in the very beginning, the company was already formed.
So this was information that you got from Dee Warner.
That's, yeah.
So it's not
We're gonna-
firsthand
we're gonna open a
knowledge.
Feed store, and that's why DBW Investments was formed.
Any further objections?
Oh my gosh, whatever.
May I continue?
Were you there when they prepared the operating agreements for the company?
No, I didn't see any of that.
That would be
And
firsthand
so
knowledge.
what was your capacity when you worked at DDW Investments?
We started off working, the trucks were leased under Warag Farms to Auden Transport, doing some kind of
Right.
not great work with the trucks pulling their trailers, and I kept preaching to both Dee and Dale both that we could do this on our own. I had some contacts previously from where I grew up in our business and family business, and I said, I can do this myself. We don't need these people. And that's how we got started in it.
And you were able to convince Dale and Dee to get into the trucking business?
I had a harder time convincing Dee to do it.
Okay. And eventually they got into the business, right?
Yes.
Okay. And did they own their own trucks and trailers?
We had one trailer that was more or less a farm trailer, and we had a couple trucks.
So in terms of DDW Investments, it was basically just a business. They didn't own.
Okay, so Charles is getting some work done, and he's over here making these faces. He's distracting me.
Anything. That was, the trucks and trailers were owned by another company.
Very
true. And would the name Cedar Creek mean anything to you?
That Cedar Creek, after advice of probably Doug Hartong or somebody through the years, advised them to separate.
Objection, Your Honor. That is hearsay.
No, it's not. It's the truth. Call Doug up himself. He's
He's giving me a headache. We've only been in this thing for about 10 minutes and he's giving me a headache. Oh my gosh. Dude, it's hearsay. Don't argue with the attorney what the legal definition of hearsay is. He didn't say you were lying. He just said it was hearsay. Hearsay does not mean it's a lie. You can be absolutely telling the 100% and it still be hearsay.
close by.
Okay, Mr. Nair, hang on.
And he's being confrontational.
I'll move on.
Control your witness,
Sheriff,
dude.
The trucks were owned by Cedar Creek, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, once we got established more.
Okay, and your job in the office every day, strike that. How often would you work? Every day?
Pretty much every day.
You live in
Right.
close proximity?
Yeah.
So you work part-time every day? What time frame are we talking about here, Mr.
Where the office
Yeah.
was?
Attorney?
Did Dee and Warner trust you basically to run the dispatch and,
Yes,
how many customers of DDW Investments are?
there's probably 5 to 8 core customers, people that we work for every week. Then there's another 5 to 10 customers that are
I'm sorry, I thought he was fired. Does he work there or not? Hold on.
probably 5 to 8 core customers, people that we work for every week. Then there's another 5 to 10 customers that are brokers that they are larger companies. And if you yourself had a truck and called them, okay, I've got a truck here, can I do a load for you? You've got freight, it's larger companies that broker stuff out like that.
Okay, and how does it work with the, your job and the office personnel? somebody contacts DDW Investments, they need somebody to move some freight.
As a rule, I mean, it's relationships, and building a good name with customers and having an established record of doing a decent job for people.
Okay. Were you familiar with the customers of DDW Investments?
Yes.
Sure, I'm gonna approach this.
Okay.
Todd, I'm showing you what's been admitted as Exhibit 1, which is purported to be a list of names, addresses, phone numbers of people who or entities that have done business with DDW Investments.
Mhm.
You recognize any of the names on there?
Yeah.
Would you recognize that as a proprietary list? In other words, an asset of the company? Or was it just a list of names?
It's a list of names right here, but for these names on here, you have to have a relationship with these people, do any business with them.
Are any of those competitors by chance?
There's a few people that are customers now of late laws, and they're customers. I mean, most of these people, you're not an exclusive carrier for,
So when you say you're not an exclusive carrier, does that mean that there are other
Yes.
competitors in the industry and anybody can hire whoever they want?
Yeah, it's, price, volume and all that.
I was gonna say, what dictates whether somebody would hire a particular firm or not?
If they like working with somebody, a lot of it is whether or not they trust the person to move their product, that they're on time and everything else.
Okay. Did you have a working relationship with Dee Warner?
Yes,
And how long did you work with her?
from when I worked there part-time all the way through April 24th of 2021.
Okay. And what were some of the things that you would do with her on a given day?
We would talk about driver issues or, strategize sometimes about stuff that, maybe we need to try something different or something like that.
Would you ever work with Zach back in the office?
In the 2 years previous to Dee's disappearance, very little. Zach wasn't around there very much.
How about before that?
He was there more and put more time into it.
Okay. So if he testified that he worked there from the time he was in high school, 2007, 8, 9 to 2014, you wouldn't dispute that, right?
Correct. I mean, he worked there and he would come and mow the grass. He would do whatever his mom needed. He just,
And at some point in time, he left working at DDW Investments.
yeah, he went and was selling more real estate. And I think his mom, when he came back in 2016 or 17, his mom needed a confidant there in the office more than anything.
Okay.
She needed a shoulder that she could depend on.
Okay.
Objection.
Who else worked in the office besides?
Oh, you know
Zach
that.
And Dee?
Stephanie Volpe went there.
Okay. Anybody else?
Started in July of 16.
Anybody else?
Previous to 2016.
Yeah.
There's Diane Shook worked there, Nicole Miller, Nikki Seeley, Stacy Fuller, there's Jackie Bauer.
Okay.
There's been a number of people that worked there previous.
Were you involved at all in doing any of the invoicing with any of the customers?
I oversaw it after it was invoiced, just to make sure there weren't any errors and that it went to the proper place for payment.
Would there ever be a time from time to time where you would go to Dee and say, there's a mistake here, or there's a problem?
Yeah, I would write it and correct it, and I would also write down what we did every week.
Were you at all involved in paying any of the expenses for DDW Investments?
No,
Who primarily did that?
that was usually Zach.
Okay.
And at times Dee would just yell at Zach for not paying something on time.
Are you at all familiar with any of the other Warner entities that were run out of that office?
The farm was there and the farm services.
Were you at all involved with those companies?
Very little. I would help haul in hydro tanks or something if they needed it or whatever. Anything that needed to be done, I would help.
Okay. Did you ever work with Dale Warner?
Yeah.
Okay. In what capacity would you work?
I would help them do whatever. If they were farming and needed help moving or something like that, I would help them. Or hauling grain in the fall, I would help them.
Okay. As you recall, was Dale ever involved in DDW Investments and any of the trucking business?
He oversaw, like when we buy equipment and stuff, and, if he saw something that wasn't, working or something like that, mostly he oversaw the maintenance and that kind of thing.
So I gather from your testimony that Dee Warner ran the business.
Well, I ran more or less. I mean, I dealt with customers, the drivers, and pretty much the issues that came up day to day.
Have you ever worked with Mark Weisberg?
He wants to give himself so much credit for everything. It's my idea that they did trucking. They used my connections. I ran the business. I
Yeah,
agree.
Mark started working there in April of 14.
Okay. And what, as you know, was Mr. Weisberg's role there?
He was a CFO, whatever the hell you call it. He came in there right at the time when Dee had a disagreement with Stacy Fuller, who had worked there for probably 5 years. And Mark came in there and Dee needed somebody right away, and she hired him right on the spot. Can you start next week or tomorrow?
Okay.
She didn't really do any sort of background check on him or anything. She hired him on the spot, and Mark was there and did what she needed done.
Objection. I would object. Lack of foundation. How do you know these things? How do you know she didn't do a background check? He was hired. Did she do a background check later? How do you know? We basing this
And
on.
what kinds of things would Mark Weisberg do that you could observe, personally observe?
Bookkeeping and that kind of stuff, and at the time they were involved in buying that goddamn Russell
Can you please
farm.
refrain
Oh,
from using?
He done cursed so much. Thank you, Judge. He was working my
I'm
nerves.
sorry, there's a lot worse I should say about that, but that's,
Thank
I apologize.
Apology accepted.
But that, and he helped with that. It just,
Did,
Your Honor, I didn't hear the full answer of what was being purchased. I should.
I don't either,
you repeat your answer?
but I don't care.
the Russell farm up in Manchester.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Weisberg was primarily responsible for assisting Dee in running some of the business operations.
Well, the finance part of it, I guess, and it was an overwhelming process, that whole thing. It was overwhelming from my outside looking in financially and everything else at the time.
Did you know that DPW Investments LLC was in debt to the IRS?
I did not know that. I knew that there were some tax issues, but
So
it
what do you
was around
do?
the first-
So what do you define what do you define debt to the IRS if you don't define that as tax issues?
first week of April in 2021, Dee said to me, says, we have the taxes all paid. We can go forward right
Oh,
now,
tell me something.
but the taxes are all paid.
Okay.
She told that to me.
So I guess
Did
you
you come to find
running,
out later?
so I guess you weren't running the company, were you? She was keeping you out of the loop and keeping things a go so that you would continue to work because you were not running the company after all.
Later that that wasn't true?
Yes,
And why would you have known that?
because Mark they'd gotten notices in the mail, registered letters. I've gotten them. I've been arguing with the IRS most of my adult life, and I know what a registered letter from the IRS means. It's not good.
And as it relates to DPW,
Do you know this or you're guessing this?
investments,
That payroll taxes were not
Do you
paid.
read the notice? Come on,
Um, did you ever discuss that with Zach Bach or anyone
No,
else in the office?
No,
irritated. So irritated.
Mr. Narek, you, at some point in time, were you terminated by Dee Warner?
I wasn't terminated by Dee Warner. I was terminated by Judge Sala.
Okay. And you,
About who? Judge.
By Dee Warner, I was terminated by Judge Sala.
okay. And I think are you referring to the January 2022 order that?
Yes,
Okay, so,
that was when I was officially terminated from DDW Investments.
got it, okay. So before that, though, you performed your role and job in the office like we had
Yeah,
talked about.
yep.
And you were in charge of running the trucking operation?
Yes.
Okay. 'Cause you
Your
were-
Honor, I'm going to object. I'm not sure how any of this is relevant.
well, I
Thank
think
you.
It's explaining his version of the facts, which
Which
So
what?
far, we've had 40 minutes of testimony that has nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, the 5 areas in the motion are quite clear about the diversion from the DDW bank account, the sale of assets, the SBA loan to Warag, the new Warag bank account, and the diversion of the Warag payments. This has nothing to do with that. Doesn't speak to any of those issues.
so we're going to talk about DPW transportation right now. So if I may continue.
You can
Yep.
continue as long as you bring it into what we're here to talk about today.
Yeah,
Well,
get
I think
there,
DPW transportation is one of those issues.
get there, get
Listed
there.
as Item number 1.
Do you intend to show that this gentleman was responsible for a diversion of
No.
funds?
No,
Or what is
I'm going to
the-
ask him whether he knew whether or not there was any diversion and how the company was set up.
How can you know if there's a version that happened after he was terminated?
It didn't. Never, there was no diversion, but I'm gonna ask.
Took him a long time to clean that one up. How would he know if there's a diversion of funds if it happened after he was terminated? It didn't happen after he was terminated, but it didn't happen.
Well, I think it looks like we're gonna need to lay a little bit more foundation about how he would have that knowledge.
That's fine. Mr. Merrick, I believe you testified that you learned that Dee Warner disappeared in April of 2021. Is that true?
Yes,
What happened with the trucking business after she disappeared?
kept right on work.
And at that point, I believe you testified that you learned that there was some IRS debt.
Yes,
And I believe you testified that it was payroll taxes to the IRS related to DDW investments. At some point in time, were you around when a company called DDW Transportation was formed?
Yeah.
You know anything about that?
only thing was I knew that Jim Duzma, a longtime attorney for both Dale and Dee, who helped them go through various issues, advised the formation of DDW Transportation.
I'm going to object to this knowledge as hearsay. I haven't heard that this is personal knowledge he gained from parties.
Well, would you like to respond?
Sure. Were you around when, or were you available when Mr. Guzman talked to you?
I wasn't there, but I had, knowledge of conversation that Dale and Mark were having, and they said that we were gonna have to form another.
Okay, this witness is not clear on what hearsay means, and he wants to argue so bad that he knows what he's talking about. And hearsay is not about the knowledge that you know versus how you gained that knowledge. It's so aggravating. And this attorney does not, in my opinion, steer his client well, he's not his client, his witness well. He lets him kind of get off topic, and there's times that he's not even answering the question that the attorney's asking, and the attorney just moves on. But whatever.
IRS debt.
Okay. So, did you ever have conversations with Jim Guzman over the years?
No.
How did you know that he was the attorney that Dale and Dee would use? To
I
do
heard
this work?
Jim Duzma over many issues that they had over the years.
Okay. And you knew him to be their corporate attorney,
Yes,
but you personally have never met him. Okay. You never called him, you never had a conversation?
no, I'm,
All right. So DDW Transportation is set up. Are you aware of how it was set up, or for what its intended purposes were, other than what you just testified, which
Compound.
was to deal with the tax issues
deal with the tax issue was the only reason.
of DDW investments?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm still objecting because that was based upon the information from the attorney, and the information wasn't direct, he never spoke.
Response?
I'll just rephrase the question.
All right, it is sustained. It is hearsay evidence. It's already in the record, of course, but I will recognize that it is secondhand information. Go ahead.
Motion to strike it.
Mr. Neer,
Strike
at
strike
some
it off
point
the
in time,
record.
DDW Transportation is operating as an entity, correct? Okay. Were you there while the corporation was operating?
yeah,
You know when the corporation was formed?
it was August of 21.
And your testimony was that it was to deal with tax issues, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So do you know who owned DDW Investments?
Dale Warner.
Was it Dale Warner exclusively?
Objection, speculation. There's been no foundation laid as to how he knows who owns what.
Oh, he's going over ownership, man. You let him slide. He slid that taxation thing back into the record. But the judge is going to take judicial notice that it's hearsay and not actually a representation of facts that he's known to this witness, that it's just hearsay information so therefore it will not be used in weighing her particular determination. But if this was a jury trial, this record is messy.
Mr. Mayor, how would you know that Dale Warner was the only person that was listed as an owner?
That's all. That's what I know.
Did you have any conversations with Mark Weisberg or anyone else to learn
That
that?
they formed this other company and Dale was the only one there to form. That's,
Okay. Do you know why Dee Warner was not listed on the DDW Transportation
She wasn't
LLC Articles of Incorporation?
she was not there.
Why was she not there?
She disappeared. I pray to God she's someplace still here.
This witness is messy. Okay. So this corporation was formed after her disappearance. This witness is representing that it was formed after her disappearance due to the taxation issues of the original investment company. So they started a whole new company. I don't know if that really would help you much because, quite honestly, you're not going to evade the IRS. It's not going to happen. They will just put a lien on everything you own. So you're really not going to invade them. The other thing is when you start a new company, especially in transportation or anything, transportation like childcare, things that are medical, those things have high insurance premiums, right? And your premiums go down based upon the longevity. So, and without, incident. So how long have you not had an incident? How long have you been a client? These are the things that kind of help your premiums along. You turn around and start a whole new company, the taxation problems that you think you're evading, you might be hiking up your premium. I'm talking about thousands of dollars. You might as well just be making that money to the IRS. They're just going to come 3 months later, 6 months later, and put a lien on your new company because now you're trying to evade tax. You're creating tax fraud, I guess. So no,
And
doesn't help.
at this point in time, DDW Transportation is operating. And what was the purpose as you learned? What were they doing? Were they operating as a trucking company?
Operating as a trucking company.
Okay. Did you work for them or did you continue to work for DDW?
I worked for DDW Transportation.
Okay.
So they
you
were
moved
a
over from
trucking
DDW
company.
Investments LLC to DDW Transportation.
Yes,
Objection, that mischaracterizes his testimony. He just said he did the same thing.
You're welcome to cross-examine
Okay.
if you wish.
I'm confused. What's the objection to?
Okay. So you moved over from DDW Investments LLC to DDW Transportation.
yes.
Objection, that mischaracterizes his testimony. He just said he did the same thing.
Oh, no. I don't know what it
You're welcome to
means.
cross-examine
Okay.
if you
Yeah.
wish. Your next question?
Yes.
What that means.
Mr. Nerick, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm just a little fuzzy, but okay. You testified that in August 2021, DDW Transportation, as you knew, was created. Yes?
Yes,
Okay. You then transferred over from DDW Investments LLC to DDW Transportation LLC. Is that true?
yes,
So was your paychecks then coming from DDW Transportation?
yes, eventually they were.
Okay. Do you know whether or not Mr. Warner opened a bank account in August of 2021?
I don't know that he opened a bank account at that time.
Okay. At some point in time, he opened a bank account because you received checks, right?
Yes,
Do you know whether or not expenses were paid out of DDW Transportation?
I would hope also.
He's not the
I would hope
accountant.
so.
He's not the accountant. Doesn't
Sir,
know.
is that no? He didn't say that.
Yes, they were.
That's
Uh,
stupid. You don't know that. What is he doing? Why is this attorney allowing his witness to be so off the rails? He needs to be instructing the witness to not make commentary to these attorneys, like just answer his questions as posed and not get into the middle of the objection. He's being rude to the court, so it's disrespectful to the court. She's not taking the judges. This judge has a good, even temper. She really does. She's good. She's so good at her job. She keeps it going. But he's being rude to the court. And then why would you allow him? Now he's going to be impeached because he wasn't the accountant. He wasn't the bookkeeper. He said he did operational stuff, but he didn't pay anything out of the accounts. That wasn't a part of his job description. So why is he making representation that expenses were paid out of this particular account? Just because he received his payroll out of that account. There are entities typically have more than one account, one for payroll, one for expenses, and then a savings account for income. And they don't necessarily write expense checks out of the payroll account. So, was
DDW Investments LLC
Just,
still alive as a company today?
Yes,
Was never sold, correct?
correct.
It never lost any of its assets, is that true?
True.
I'm
How
gonna
do you
object,
know?
or how he has
How
any
do you
idea he doesn't work
know?
there anymore. If it's still alive, how can you say never?
How would you know that, sir?
I've been around there ever since whenever. I would have to go through, I'm not sure what your name is, and look through the titles for the insurance to see how everything was titled. Every title, everything that was there for insurance purposes and everything, I looked at to make sure it was insured properly.
That's non-responsive. That has absolutely nothing to do with the objection. And quite frankly, this attorney has him testifying to things all across the board that just stretches beyond necessity, in
There's
my
no minimum
opinion.
objection.
Yeah.
Well, you're welcome to
Sustained.
cross-examine him. I would agree with you, but I think it goes to the weight of the testimony, not necessarily the admissibility.
I would agree.
No.
Now, Mr. Nemrick, at some point in time, DDW Transportation's operating in, what was your role with DDW Transportation?
The same thing as I,
Ask and answer. 3 times actually.
And
Sustained.
Move
I
on.
have another question.
did you deal with the customers the same way you did with DDW Investments?
yes,
Do you have another question?
Work with the billings and deal with the invoices and do all the stuff that you were doing with DDW Transportation?
yes.
Were any of the customers different from DDW Investments to DDW Transportation?
No,
And so, as you know, at some point in time, you were terminated.
Oh, they're cracking up back
from
there.
DW Investments, yeah.
Wish I knew what they were talking about.
Are you aware that in September of 2021, this court appointed a conservator? You know who the conservator was?
Russ Dempsey,
Were you ever contacted by Russ Dempsey as one of the people working for DDW Investments or DDW Transportation?
yes, I was.
And where did you meet him?
I did not meet him.
Did you talk to him?
Yes, Mr. Dempsey phoned me.
And what, if anything, was said to him?
Mr. Dempsey told me after,
Objection hearsay.
Mr. Dempsey,
Response?
Mr. Dempsey testified in court. I'm just curious about what their conversation was in terms of why he was contacting him.
Doesn't matter if you're testifying in court.
It is hearsay. Is there any other reason that you would have an exception to the hearsay rule on this?
It goes to the way that the testimony, he's talking about,
So if I get this correct, the witness can say what he told Mr. Dempsey, I believe. But Mr. Dempsey has to say what he told that witness. And so his question is posed to him, what did he say? What came out of the conversation? And he started answering the question as, well, he contacted me for this particular purpose. He said this versus just saying, I told him X, Y, Z. I think that's why they're going back and forth, but it's just funny. Doesn't matter yet. Hearsay is hearsay.
Have an exception to the hearsay rule on this?
it goes to the way that the testimony, he's talking about his first meeting with the conservative.
Wait, no, an exception to hearsay.
I think it is.
Is there a particular exception you would like to review?
No.
Sustained, please move on to your next question.
Mr. Nemrick, so you never actually met with Russ, you just talked to him on the phone. I'm not asking you what you said to him, but you talked to him on the phone.
he was there at the office one day and I didn't speak with Mr. Dempsey.
Okay. Did Mr. Dempsey ask you to produce anything for him
No.
as a conservator?
No,
Did Mr. Dempsey, was Mr. Dempsey aware of DDW Transportation?
I think in January of 2022.
You were to object, Your Honor, calls for speculation. He never met with Mr. Dempsey. How do you know if he was aware of the formation of any
Just say
company?
Mr. Dempsey was in the office.
The
You say to speak
affidavit,
with him.
the affidavit I got that he,
You have to wait for the judge to rule.
oh, okay, sorry.
Again,
This could go really simple if I would just be allowed to ask simple questions.
It's so funny how the attorneys do that. This will go so easy if you just let me have my way and stop objecting. You guys are not on the same team, so they're not going to just give you an open road to just run around in. They're going to keep you tightened to the evidence, keep you tightened to the rules, because they don't want you, speeding past anything and flying into something that's not needed to be on the record. They have to do their job to preserve. I would assume he's probably a trial attorney, but they have to do their job to preserve the evidence that they want, to get out there and to protect their clients that they're representing and ensure that the case is in line with what they're there for. If I remember correctly, a part of the issue was they felt like Mr. Warner was doing fraudulent things to keep money away from the heirs. But I don't know, starting a company after her death, maybe that's one of the reasons, keeping all of her clientele and just changing the name of the company to something altogether new. You say for tax evasion, but maybe it's because she's dead and she's not around to sign checks and paperwork and to get things done. And so consequently, you need a whole new company and you want to keep money from the heirs and you want to pretend like the business for which they are owners to, or that they have, any entitlement to is not functional. It still exists, but it's not making any money because you're taking all the money and putting it in a whole new company. I don't know. Maybe that's what they want to argue.
Your Honor, I would note that the witness seems to be texting on his phone. I don't know if he's communicating with somebody while he's testifying. That's a huge problem.
He's on his
Aside from
phone.
I
rude as well.
Yeah, I know, just like you are.
Okay,
Oh, foul on the play. This witness, no offense, but this is like gosh, terrible, 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 terrible. There's etiquette. So we talk about Zoom etiquette on court a lot because that's typically what we get to see is everybody walking around with their phone in and outside their house, laying down in their bed, everything that they're not supposed to be doing, right? But there's etiquette in traditional court as well. When you are testifying, you're not allowed to have devices or even paperwork. You come and you testify to your firsthand knowledge for what you can recollect at the time. And if you're an expert and you have notes, you have to ask for permission to look at those experts to reflect your understanding. Once you do that, you put the notes down and then you testify from your knowledge based upon the refreshment. You do not go and keep looking at your notes and reading your notes and going back. So all of this, I'm on my phone just like you are. You're not the attorney, right? And so even in the in the audience of the court, you cannot just be on your phone. I know we do it and we're down here and we're doing it, but you can't be on your phone texting and taking pictures or communicating what's going on in court. You can't just do that, right? We saw that in Johnny Depp v. Heard case where Eve Barlow, I think she was on her laptop, but she had a phone, a laptop, and all kinds of communicating devices and ended up getting reprimanded and kicked out of court for having those things. And she was sitting behind the chairs here, behind the attorneys. This guy is on the witness stand talking about, oh, you're on your phone, I can be on my phone. You do not have the same permissions as the attorneys do. You're not there fighting for the case, you're there testifying. And as the attorney said, rightfully so on record, we don't know what you're texting about. We don't know what you're doing because you could be getting coached by someone outside the court. We don't know.
what is the purpose of this line of questioning, Mr.
The
Lee?
purpose of this line of questioning, Judge, is to find out what he knew and when he knew it.
And why not?
Mr. Polderman has alleged that there was diversion of funds from DBW Investments, that there was this creation of a new company, a new bank account, that was all criminal. That Mr.
Oh my goodness. So the heirs, the family is like, look, they diverted funds from one entity to another. And he's like, no. He's like, they're trying to say that's a criminality when in fact it wasn't. It was just good business sense. It's good business sense to avoid the IRS. No, your witness just proved what they are alleging, that they diverted funds, that they started a whole new company to do exactly what the original company was already doing to avoid payment for the IRS and problems with the IRS. And God knows what else. There goes that, like, come
Warner
on.
had the intent to violate this court's orders. And this may have all been before this court's orders.
This witness,
Look at Charles, look at Charles, look at
To
Charles.
violate this court's orders. And this may have all been before this court's orders.
Liar.
this witness has
You remember, Charles Bullock is a part of the CPA team or the auditing team, something to the effect of the finances. So he's the one that's digging through all the finances to determine diversion, where the funds are going, why if the funds are being nefariously used or what's going on. So his whole expression is like, you gotta be kidding me. You just coming up to court lying. You know what's going on. And he would know because he's the one looking at the records.
This witness has testified that he has never spoken directly to Mr. Dempsey. So how can he know what, it's up to you if you want to continue asking him these
I'll
questions.
just move on.
It just doesn't, it's not very helpful.
Okay.
Charles is tickled pink.
Mr. Mr. At some point, you learned that DDW and Transportation was operating, and at the
Oh
same
God,
time,
how slow,
were
where
you
are we
aware
at
that
again?
there were expenses being leveled against DDW
Went to
investments?
object again, Your Honor. He testified that he had no idea about the payments that were due. He handled invoices
I-
on the back end.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Did you become aware at some point in time that DDW Transportation was continuing to operate, and at some point in time you were terminated?
I was terminated in January 2022.
How did you learn you were terminated?
That's
You
an
guys
answer.
come back from here and, no, by the way, you got from here.
Okay, and what, if anything, did you do?
Your Honor, what's the relevance? I'm still trying to tie this in with the elements of the contempt of court. I don't see the relevance in that question whatsoever.
The relevance is, Judge, if he was terminated by this court order in January, what, if anything, did he do with DDW Transportation or DDW Investments? Or did you just leave?
We're not here on his contempt, we're here on Dale Warner's contempt of court, Your Honor.
I'll get right to my point then.
Thank you.
During and within the course of the time that you worked for DDW Transportation, did Dale Warner or anybody else intend to violate this court's orders?
Objection calls for speculation and hearsay as far as what Dale Warner intended.
Did you know?
Oh,
Would you like to make me to make a ruling, or are you going to, what, do you
I'd
want to
like the court to
respond?
make a ruling. Yeah, I would like the court to allow me to directly examine my witness, and they will have an opportunity to cross-examine on anything. That's what open cross-examination is.
Well, you've asked him a question that requires him to potentially speculate
speculates?
on what he thought that your client thought. So
Can't
unless
do
you think
that.
that he has some particular experience that would allow him to have that information,
Here's a voodoo doll. He can read minds.
not be inclined to allow the question, if he's overheard some kind of conversation by your client or something, that's one thing. But just to simply ask him if he knows what your client thought seems rather speculative.
Let me ask you this. Mr. Narek, how often would you be with Dale Warner while you were working at DDW Transportation?
It depended on the day. Some days, very much, I did my thing and they did theirs.
Okay, and when you say you did your thing, what would that be?
Oh,
Keeping
Jesus.
The guys running and everything else.
And what would they do? Who was they and what would they do?
He and Mark did the accounting and whatever else needed to be done. I am good at
Yeah.
some things and better at others.
Do you see how his questioning is all over the place? Everyone is confused, including the witness. He starts off saying, how often were you around Dale? And then when he responds and says, you know, some days I do a lot with him, some days I wouldn't. Then it's like, well, what did you do? Like, you've already talked about what his assignments were. Get to the point
Based upon your
about
day-to-day involvement.
how
with
he
Dale,
knows what
You
Dale's
believe-
thinking.
You believe, based upon your personal observations and conversations, that he did anything illegal, unethical, or
Oh my
intended to
God.
violate this court's orders?
No,
Why would you think?
Okay.
everything that they owned was together. Everything they still own was together. That's my opinion.
Okay. Were you involved at all with the sale of DDW Transportation
It's objection.
to Labor?
Put on objection here,
In what
because this is
regard?
ridiculous.
How were you involved?
I had a working relationship with Laidlaw. I've been offered jobs with Laidlaw multiple times, and I knew that if I left, it would leave a large bunch of debt because the guys that drive the trucks, they work for me. Dale and Dee signed their checks, but every one of them guys have stuck with me and worked. Just like they stuck with Dale and Dee working after all that had gone on over the years. But them guys, every one of them have stayed there working with me because they believed in me. Dale and Dee signed their checks, but they worked with me.
Are you aware that the assets that were sold were from Cedar Creek Express?
The equipment was in Cedar Creek.
And do you know whether or not Dale and Dee Warner were both involved in that company?
At the time, Dale was only one, but they're married, so what's the,
Okay. Do you know what the result of the sale was?
I know there was fairly decent
I'm
numbers.
gonna object unless
All right, people, but let's get the, okay.
he knows firsthand, Your Honor.
I'm asking, Mike.
No, he did not ask what's your firsthand knowledge. Anything else could be hearsay.
Would you like to respond?
Mr. Nerick, what is your knowledge of the sale?
Okay, so here's a public service announcement. I guess the witness is not aware of this, but just because you're married does not mean you're automatically entitled to the other spouse's assets. First, it depends on what state you're in. And then no matter what state you're in, it also depends on how that asset is acquired. You can acquire property and have an interspousal declaration filed on title that precludes the spouse from having ownership of the property you have acquired. You can have a business and you can have the business only in one spouse's name. You can employ another spouse. Then the business can be dissolved and give complete 100% ownership to one spouse that can be under a trust, can be transferred to a whole nother person and not go to the surviving spouse. So all of these assertions that, oh, they obviously own them together, they're married and partners and does not mean that that's the way the paperwork was set up. Just because a couple is married does not mean that the paperwork is set up in a way that gives them equal ownership. You can preclude another spouse from ownership. And the way you do it is that spouse has the agreement to it. You can't just do it willy-nilly. If you're going to do it as a non-community property ownership, that would be something that you have purchased outside of the marriage, and it automatically is non-community property. Otherwise, if you are purchasing something while you're married, you need to do an interspousal declaration, and that means that your spouse is signing off saying, no, I don't have ownership to this, okay? So those things can be done, and when you have a business, you put the business in the name of whomever, and you put the ownership stock in whomever. You could have 50-50% ownership. You can have 70-30% ownership. You can have 100% 0% ownership. You don't have to share ownership with the spouse of a business. It just depends on how your paperwork is brought up. So all of these assertions and assumptions that he's making, it's nothing to do with facts. And quite honestly, there are ways to make this completely inaccurate. It just depends on what they decided to do with their business when they started it. It's irritating me.
On a cocktail napkin, to be honest with you, to begin with, it was like 2.3 or something like that. You all have paperwork here.
And you know what?
Do you know
Our
anything?
position stands, it's not.
Do
he didn't testify, he
you
saw it written on the napkin
know-
When it occurred, he just says like, it was on a cocktail napkin. That, once again, that's hearsay unless he states. That's what
Was
he
there when it
says.
was written out, so,
Thank you.
Hey, could you scoot up to the microphone a little bit?
sorry, I'm busy.
That's all right.
Mr. Nerick, after the sale of DDW Transportation to Laidlaw, you know what, if anything, happened to the customers that were, as you mentioned earlier, part of DDW Transportation?
Any we heard law nerds on the scene? Are you having PTSD? The what if anything is giving me the heebie-jeebies. I wish he would stop saying it. I wish he would stop saying it because it's just reminding me of Elaine.
I talked to them, and there was a couple that we set up.
If anything.
and Stuff for the new, and we picked up that Monday and went to work.
Okay. What, do you know when that sale occurred?
It was official August 7th, or June 17th, 2022.
June 17th, 2022.
You weren't even
And I
employed
believe you
there.
said you never talked to Mr. Dempsey, right?
No, Mr. Dempsey attempted to contact me. I have it on my phone after I was terminated.
Okay.
Information
After you were
January.
terminated in January of 2022, Mr. Dempsey attempted to call you.
Yes, he texted me. In fact,
Okay.
What did he text you?
hear me out.
Are you reading from your phone?
Did you have any idea what that meant?
Okay.
No, Mr. Dempsey attempted to bribe me.
What do you mean?
Don't come along with what we're trying to do here, and we'll make everything that's going on right for you.
What was wrong with you?
There's just things that went on, work that I was done and wasn't paid for, unpaid wages.
No, I'm objecting, and the reason is, once again, we have these 5 issues, these 5 elements of the contempt of court, and this does nothing to address any of those.
I'll move on.
Yep.
Did you ever meet with Mr. Coleman?
Yeah,
And when did you first meet with Mr. Coleman?
June 20th of 2022.
June 20th of 2022.
Yep.
And what was the course of
Look, Charles is researching to figure out when this guy was last paid and why he says he has unpaid
That
wages.
meeting.
He was there and they had a pickup that I drove and he was there to
I
grab
can
that.
tell it. I can tell
What
it.
do you
That's
mean,
what he's
All right,
doing.
once again,
Yeah, I don't know how this is relevant to the 5 counts of contempt. They all predate the time period that's being asked. The fact that I was there and seized a truck that Mr. Neary drove is neither here nor there.
I'm asking if he ever met with the current successor conservator's attorney. That was
The
your.
5 issues of contempt predate all of that.
So tired.
That's why I'm asking questions. Mr. Neary,
Huh?
did you have any dealings with Dale Warner during and within the course of the nothing further.
Cross-examination?
So I think he's getting like, this is why I'm asking to find out. But truthfully, you should have talked to your witness before they got on the stand to know what they found, what they know, so that when you put them on the stand, you know what you're asking them for. Or whatever.
Good afternoon, Mr. Merrick. My name is John Polderman. I'm the attorney for the successor conservator, Charles Bullock. You testified earlier, right, that you're the division manager for Laidlaw, is that correct?
Yes,
And you also testified that you've been present on site at the business is that business located at 2170 Munger Road?
yeah,
And have you changed your offices between working for DDW Investments, DDW Transportation, or Laidlaw?
I worked on the side of the office that they pay the rent for.
So you stayed in the same spot throughout that
Well,
time?
I moved sides of my desk,
You moved to different sides of your desk, but otherwise you've been in the same room?
more or less, yeah.
Okay. And you testified earlier too that you, between the transition from DDW Investments to DDW Transportation, you essentially did the same thing. Is that correct?
Yeah,
So you dealt with the same customers between DDW Investments and DDW Transportation?
yeah,
And you, other than maybe moving on different sides of your desk, you sat in the same spot and worked at the same spot?
pretty much, yeah.
And you dealt with the same people too, right? Dale Warner was present?
To a point,
And
Yes or no?
how were things transitioned between DDW Investments and DDW Transportation? Did letters go out?
not really. I had conversations with the customers myself because I was the one that with both companies and actually the transition to Laidlaw that dealt with the customers.
Right. you
I could have
testified you
went
were
to work for
critical.
John Town Trucking and took every customer with me and would have worked for them because
Motion to strike everything from not exactly. We've got a whole bunch of stuff that's
they
not
were comfortable
responsive.
dealing
We're
with
talking
me.
about.
Right, and you know, you notified the customers, right, that there was someone new that they'd be dealing with as far as where to send their payment between
Yeah.
investments and transportation
And Laidlaw.
and Laidlaw. Did Dale Warner ever speak to you about this transition
Which transition,
between investments and transportation?
just that Jim Guzman advised him to do something before the IRS came in and started seizing stuff.
Right, so transportation was formed to avoid debt with the IRS, correct?
I don't know that for fact. I know that there were significant issues that,
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. On direct examination, he was trying to get that out. Well, it's the truth. It's the truth. And now all of a sudden he's a knew it for a fact on cross. Come on.
we have a
Come
federal tax
on.
lien that it's kind of hard to overcome, especially the amount that was.
Oh, you're assuming a lot,
But that's what
dude.
you were told.
Yes,
It's not true.
And how about the sale?
It's not true. You call the IRS, you make payment arrangements, and you make payments like you would any other debtor. If you can also get to a point where you can show the IRS if their calculations are improper, if you have that record, but otherwise you make payment arrangements to pay it off.
Sale of DDW Transportation that you testified that took place in June of 2022, correct?
yes.
I'd ask you to put your phone on.
I'm sorry, I have one of my guys that's trying to reach me and,
Too bad. He's gonna have to wait while you're on the stand.
Please.
no problem.
So in June of 2022, transportation is sold to Laidlaw, correct?
Yep,
And those were the same customers you had been dealing with, right? Whether you had the investments hat on or the transportation hat on. After that, you had the Laidlaw hat on, so to speak, and you were dealing with the same customers?
I myself dealt with them. Dale Warner nor Dee Warner had a whole lot of contact with any of the customers.
Right. That wasn't what I asked you. I said,
What?
well, you're dealing,
Well,
listen to my question, please.
Yes, answer my
Did
question.
you have the contact
Camille Vasquez in the house. Answer my question. Let's try my question.
Same customers between
Yes.
investments, transportation, and Laidlaw.
Yep.
And in fact, well, let me back up. Did you review the purchase agreement between DDW
No.
Transportation?
No,
Did you have any part in negotiating that?
only thing I negotiated was my salary.
As far as what?
Oh,
All
no.
the what does salary mean? My salary with Laidlaw, and I had to buy a car of my own to drive because it wasn't part of my salary.
Right, so you negotiated with the Laidlaw as far as your salary and other benefits.
Yeah,
You testified earlier that DDW Investments still has assets. Is that a
no, I
fair?
didn't.
Okay, then what did you say?
What did I say?
That's exactly what you said. That's exactly what you said. You said they still have their assets. They're still on operation. It's still going. And they objected to it saying, how would you know you don't even work there? That's when she made that objection.
You're the genius.
Don't argue with me. Don't do it. I'll
Rude.
ask you again. What
So
asset? I'll
rude.
try it again. What asset
Rude and out of line. And you're repeating yourself because on direct, that's exactly what you said. And you're on the record for saying it.
do you believe DDW Investments has?
No,
I mean, not impeaching, perjury.
And what is the basis for your statement?
I've reviewed titles for insurance purposes for DDW Investments over the years to make sure everything was insured properly. There's never been anything titled in DDW Investments other than the pickup that you guys.
How about some trailers?
The trailers, I don't,
If you know.
no, there's none. Trailers are Cedar Creek.
How about the office equipment was there? You said you basically sat at the same spot. So was there ever a bill of sale or anything transferring the computers and equipment and things like that between investments and transportation and eventually Laidlaw?
I know between the investments and transportation, I have no knowledge of. Laidlaw provided me with a computer, a printer, and even a nice chair to sit in.
How about a desk?
The desk is the same old desk.
So you were using assets of the investment company, even though you started this whole transportation company and you didn't pay the investment company for the assets. You didn't purchase them. You didn't purchase the furniture. You didn't purchase the equipment from them. Okay. But you're not moving money around. Oh no, you're not doing anything nefarious. That in and of itself is nefarious. You've just stolen
Is there anyone
equipment.
currently assisting you?
No, I have, as far as my capacity with Laidlaw,
Correct.
what do you mean by, what are you looking for?
Who else is employed?
Just the drivers.
Just the drivers. Do any of Dale's children help out at the farm?
Jaron helps him, his son and his daughters help with various things.
How about in the gap period? So roughly between April of 2021 to, let's say, April of 2022, who helped with services at the farm?
Services as far as
Anything.
Booking drivers, paying bills, doing administrative things.
drivers, I handled everything.
Were Dale's children around then as well?
Yeah,
And what did they do?
is that really, I mean, they did the invoicing and that's,
So they would help with some of the invoicing
yeah,
as far
the
as.
office work.
Okay.
I'm not sure what they did every minute of the day. I'm kind of busy myself.
Would they report to you?
No,
Who would they report to?
they worked for their dad. When they did the invoicing, I reviewed it and that's it.
Did you have any knowledge as far as setting up of bank accounts?
No,
Have you ever had signing authority on any bank account?
no,
So then how do you know that the bank account that was paying you in your payroll is the same bank account for expenditures?
Were you aware of the SBA loan to Wareg? I'm sorry, Wareg Farms.
after the fact, I heard about it.
And who did you hear about it from?
I heard Mark had secured some financing after they had lost their financing with AgriFund.
Were you part of that process at all?
With what?
With AgriFund and the refinance with SBA?
All I knew is that we had to haul a bunch of grain in to pay off the note to AgriFund because the note was called.
And were those conversations between Dale and Mark?
They just told me that they had to haul grain in because the note was called.
Your Honor, I don't believe I have anything further.
Ms. McCarley?
Nothing.
Ms. Heiss?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Berger?
Nothing further.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor, but I have another matter that I would like to discuss after you excuse Mr.
Any objection?
Witness.
No,
No,
I can leave.
no
Thank,
objection.
Yes,
thank God.
Can I give you this?
No, sorry.
Okay, I'll mail it. Thank you.
Careful. Thanks.
That would hurt.
Any other witnesses, Mr. Lee?
No, Your Honor, but I would like to move again to have admitted what I call as exhibits 1 to the operating agreements under the authentication rule. I believe that that covers them in terms of a hearsay objection.
I'm sorry.
I don't know what Charles is doing back there, but he's giving me like, what Charles, what are you doing? Because he's also stopping to work and take phone calls. So I don't know if he's doing that or if he's responding directly to what his attorney is now asserting about these doggone operational. One of them's not even filled out all the
Under
way.
the authentication rule, I believe that that
Agreements.
covers them in terms of a hearsay objection.
I'm sorry. Say that again.
901 authentication rule.
Okay.
And what is it that you wish to present for purposes of authentication?
The 2 documents, the operating agreements,
Who's gonna
That I
authenticate it?
wanted to bring under the business records rule, but now I'd like to have it under authentication under 901.
Judge, it's not an acceptable hearsay. It might fix the issues that Mr. McFarland had as to the question of authentication or originality. It doesn't cure the fact that it's still an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
It's a business record kept in the ordinary course of business.
And the person who testifies in relation to a business record has to have firsthand knowledge. Generally, they're the records keeper, they're the person that creates the document at the time that at or close to the time that it happens.
Right, Mr. Beck testified that he was aware of the documents. It's
He testified he was
Question
not
of
aware of
fact.
the documents and he did not create them.
Right.
But he specifically testified he'd never even seen one of them before.
Okay. Do you have a response to that, Mr. Lee?
no judge. I mean, I just thought that it applied and I'd like the court to rule it.
Authentication, this is 901 addresses the requirement of authentication or identification.
Waives the issue of authentication.
What?
Or
Do you
correct.
have a copy of the rule in front of you? I'm literally reading it. It says requirement of authentication or identification. 901, general provision, A, the requirement of authentication or identification as a condition precedent to admissibility is satisfied by evidence sufficient to support a finding that the matter in question is what its proponent claims. Illustrations, and these are examples of how, or in some instances, by evidence that has been considered sufficient to support the finding that a court could make, that the matter in question is what it is claimed to be. The first way to do that would be through testimony, which we've already determined as of this point is not sufficient. Non-expert opinion on handwriting doesn't apply. Comparison by trier or expert witness. I don't have anything to compare it with.
I don't know what he read. I am reading the authentication rule. This is the Michigan Court Rule 901 that they're talking about. And it's saying how evidence can get in. She's helping him to understand that. But it's saying how, in general, to satisfy the requirement of authenticating a document or identifying an item of evidence, the proponent must produce evidence sufficient to support a finding that the item is what the proponent claims it is. So what is your problem? Like, where is he I don't understand where he's coming up with, because of this rule, he can get these documents in. I don't understand his reasons.
Distinctive characteristics haven't been presented. There's no call for voice identification, telephone conversations, public records or reports. This indicates evidence that a writing authorized by law.
He might be trying to say the non-expert opinion about handwriting, a non-expert's opinion that handwriting is genuine based on a familiarity with it that was not acquired for the current litigation. So maybe the son can authenticate the fact that that's his mom's handwriting. she allowed that. There was an objection that said he's not an expert, and she overruled that objection, stating that if he has familiarity with it, he can do it as a layman person. So a layman person is a non-expert. So consequently, that came in under that. But the evidence he was trying to bring in didn't come in because it still was hearsay. And I don't know, I think the son said that he was unfamiliar with the documents, and that was the major problem. It wasn't just, is that her signature? It was like, I don't know what these documents are. I've never seen them before.
Recorded or filed, and in fact recorded or filed in a public office or a purported public record, report, statement, or data compilation is from the public office where items of this nature are kept. If you have some information on that point, I'd be happy to look at that. It's certainly not an ancient document. It's not a process or system, and I've not been offered any other method provided by statute or rule.
Okay. That's what I have, Judge.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to deny the request to take that into evidence then.
My understanding is that Mr. Duzma may be available for testimony. I presented some affidavits, but.
Okay.
And
All right.
Call him in about 5 minutes. Of course, be so inclined. Hear his testimony.
All right, he will be able to be available by Zoom, I'm assuming.
I guess. My understanding was he.
All right, so that's that. We got to get into the next hearing. I guess they're going to take a little break to get their witness. Oh, Lord, was it painful for you? Because it was painful for me. Oh my goodness, we had so much feistiness. The last witness, he was just clapping at everybody. He perjured himself on the stand. He said one thing on direct and then countered and said, I have no knowledge of that on the other side. Oh, my head hurts. Oh, my head hurts. He has made my head hurt. Anyway, whatever, dude. I don't understand his reasoning for being there. And I think it's because he was so combative. He was so upset. And I believe he was, now that we've had some of his testimony, I think he was upset because he was fired in January and he feels like he's owed payment for whatever work and he hasn't been paid. And he holds the court responsible based upon the fact that the other side has put this matter before the court. But they have to do what's in the best interest of the client that they're representing. And, there's going to, somebody's going to be upset. And as a matter of fact, when court is over with, everybody's going to be upset, right? If one side wins it all and you feel like everything is perfect and all in good, something is wrong because atypically, everyone doesn't get what they want. One may get more of what they wanted, but everyone walks away losing something. And in the end, these individuals have lost their mother. Let's just be real. The woman is gone, right? They have lost her. However you want to define gone, she is not there. That's a major loss for them. And so they probably have more issues with Dale than they do the last witness. But since he's so contentious and combative, it's to say, you know what, you too, we'll put you on a list too, because he is over the hill with anger and upset. Anyway, so that's what we got in today. We do learn that this is why you have a trust. Now, I also see that, I don't know if I've told you this in this particular video. I know I've said it in times past, but just make sure that you know that if you have a business partner, you can get insurance on the business partner, okay? So that if that business partner passes, not from nefarious reasons, of course, I don't wish that on anyone, but we're all going to die someday. So if the business partner does in fact pass, hopefully from natural causes, you can claim insurance, life insurance, and then use that insurance to pay off their heirs, and you retain full ownership of the company. This, you can structure your business this way. So I tell this to you a million times. Let professionals do professional things. Please speak to a professional attorney that deals with business formation, agreements, contracts, and entity startups, because these types of things can be noted to you and you can decide if that's something that's going to be beneficial to you. Because you could find yourself in this position where one person is deceased and the family is suing you because you have done something nefarious, like start a whole new company. So instead of falling down that rabbit hole of trying to fix something that's not in line with good business practice, do the other thing, which is do good business practice. Get the insurance so that when they pass away, you can pay them out their shares via the insurance payment, right? And then you have them sign up ownership, and now you have full ownership of the entity. And then always, as usual, make sure that your interests and your ownerships of anything, any assets, put into a trust so that it can go to the right person and it's not just handed down to the surviving spouse. And again, know how your entities have been started in the first place, because your paperwork very well may say that the business has nothing to do with the spouse, that it's non-community property. Anything of that nature, if there's a clause, non-community property clause, that means it doesn't go to the surviving spouse. And consequently, what happens with it? So you need to have a dissolution clause or, a life beyond me clause, something that will define what will happen to the entity long after your passing. All right. So get in line with the professionals. Call them up, make an appointment, get your consultation together. There's lots to do, lots to do. We have learned a lot here. We have been angry enough. We want to throw things at the TV. The attorney has upset us. Some of the witnesses have been combative. This has been quite interesting day. But as always, we do wish the Warner family well. And I guess I shouldn't say just the Warner, it's the Bach family, right? Because as I can tell now that it's Warner and Bach, whomever is related to Dee, we wish you well. We wish you well. We send you love and prayers. Hopefully the little one is somehow, some way, by some miracle, acclimating to life without her mom and is able to get love and support from her siblings and the ones that and whomever else in her sphere that is able to love upon her during this hard and tumultuous time. Well wishes. I'm Lyric Armstrong, your real estate agent and advocate. Like, share, and subscribe. Share this with those who just may need to know. Everyone needs to know this. Everyone needs to know this. If you have a business or you have community property, you have a marriage, you don't have a marriage, you thinking about marriage, you may not even own like a business that has assets outside of just the business name, right? And maybe you do a service, maybe you're a hairdresser, but you have those clientels. Guess what? You could have that resold. You could list that with a real estate agent. They can list that business for sale. That could be turned into a liquidated profit that your clientele list. If you have a maid service, your clientele list can go with the business and you can sell that. Call me, I'll hook you up. You sell that on the open market and you get the money from that. That becomes liquidated funds that can be inherited by your heirs, unless you want them to take over your business if they in fact are hairdressers or maids or whatever, service providers. But if you are a service provider, you have something of assets. You have an asset. Even if you don't have a building, even if you don't own a car, even, you still have an asset. There's that business, and that clientele list can be a very lucrative, important asset, depending on what the clientele list is. So, of a trust, you can list with your real estate agent. You can put your real estate agent in your trust so that your family doesn't get some non-knowing agent who doesn't have this type of knowledge that I'm telling you about. So these are all the things you can do. So like I said, everyone needs to know this. So just go ahead and share this. Let's not keep this to ourselves. By all means, the whole reason why we're on YouTube in the first place is to learn something. So let's make sure all of our family and friends are learning too. All right, talk to you later. See you at the next video.